Hi, welcome. I'm Dave Essinger, and I'm here today talking with our visiting poet, Neil Carpathios from Shawnee State University, and his latest book is Far Out Factoids, and we'll talk more, other stuff in progress, right? But we just came from a class. We were talking with students, and just as a kind of get to know you, I'll throw the same question that we threw at them. So Neil, tell us, why are you a writer?
Why am I a writer? Wow.
I know,
That's
right?
a massive question. To be honest, I can't say I conclusively know. I think people who write value their inner life, and I think for me, I'm pretty greedy. And so I think that trying to experience something and reforming it on the page allows you to experience it like twice. So it's like you want life squared. You know, you just want to experience things in private again. It's like your own little private film studio where you can dissect experiences and arrange them on the page. And so it's kind of almost like being greedy for life, a different layer of life.
I love that. I get that. Maybe that's why I'm a fiction writer, because I'm always plotting out these things that all these storylines I don't follow. But yeah, both those are better than the answers I would have thrown out in class. My fast answer is because I tried other jobs and they were hard.
Yeah, there you go.
So,
well, writing's hard too, as you know.
Yeah, and you're getting, wow, it sounded like you're on sabbatical now.
I am.
It sounded like you're getting some good writing time in daily.
Can't complain. I have plenty of time. Quality of what I'm writing, we'll see, I don't know. But plenty of time to write, and of course, you know, time is a writer's probably most valuable thing. So
I squander that madly myself.
Yeah, well,
yes.
we do that too. But no, it's been good. It's been great to have that time to write.
Okay, so I'll ask this. I know we've all heard the process. How do you write? Question 100 times. But your writing time. You say like you said earlier that after you get a couple hours in, you feel like I should be using more of this time. Are you always writing in a way? Do you kind of check in, punch the clock, and check out, or are you kind of is there always a poem happening?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. Well, back to the sabbatical. I think the reason I'm finding it kind of challenging is I'm just not used to having that amount of free time, because I think us writers and poets, we're good at finding little pockets that we can work in. So I don't work like punching in, punching out. You know, during the year, usually, it's just snippets here and there. And so now I'm given this huge chunk of a year. It's almost too much time, and I can't fathom it. But the way I work usually is after about 3 or 4 hours, I can't do it anymore. I'm kind of burned out for the day. And I don't write every day normally, whereas this year, because of the sabbatical, I have been every single morning sitting at the desk because I have the day ahead of me. So I'll write for about 4 hours or so. And I think that's unusual for me too, that I'm not quite used to, is that I normally don't write that regularly, that rigidly. It's usually more hit and miss. Now fiction, maybe it's different. Maybe it's a little bit more of a discipline. Force yourself to sit. I don't know.
Wow, I don't know either.
I'm asking you now a question.
No, yeah, good question. A few years ago, I decided that yes, if I'm going to do this, I have to write every day, because if I'm working on a long project, it's about continuity, and I have to have the same thing going on in my head. At least engage with the work in some way every day. But there are a lot of things that can mean, and I'm. It's the same though, as far as what you say about carving out little bits of the day, and you know, we all know. I think neither of us are those people, but we know the people who are like, I must have a perfect environment in which to write, and the temperature must be precisely so. The tea must be this brand, and
now I do write though always in one spot. So I'm a little bit one of those people. I can't write in a coffee shop. Some people do that, or in a library. I do have to sit in my little home study. It's just so that's one thing I do need.
Continuity in that sense helps.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you know, I will usually not when I'm like driving, but but you know, I'll be in an airport, walking around. Got to take this note down. This is my writing for the day, right? And so location is, I'm all over the place because how else do you fit that in? But usually, most often I'm writing. I usually get on a good run of things about 10 minutes before I have to pick up my kids from school. So this is after I blow like 2.5 hours like internet research because research, right?
Right. But whatever works for you, you know, that's the thing. I think that part of being a writer or a poet is finding your own little tricks that work for you. Mm-hmm. I had a professor in graduate school, Jory Graham, very successful poet, and she mainly would compose walking around with a tape recorder.
Wow.
And she would transcribe it, and then later she would listen to herself what she spoke into the recorder, which to me, I don't hear many poets composing quite like that too often.
I hate doing that because I hate the sound of my own voice. And so because of that, I do TV interviews with people, and I make an audiobook and all those things because I can't stand that stuff. But no, really, I've tried, you know, recording notes, and is this just me? Anytime that I get the little blinking light going and it starts listening to me, I choke up and I forget anything that I thought I was going to say. And but okay, that works for her. We have to find our little tricks there.
And I have to write in the morning, always early. You know, about 5 o'clock till, like I said, maybe 11 o'clock. I'm a morning writer, morning person. So.
Is that because your ideas are best then, or because like you can't focus on the other things of your day until you get the daily writing out, or
yeah, maybe some of that, but it's quiet. I'm most energetic in the morning. I've noticed the older I get too, you know, evening time I get tired, I wind down. And I know some people write at night, you know, different time. But yeah, morning is quiet and I feel fresh.
A lot of great and famous works have been composed when the kids are asleep or in school, or
exactly.
we work with what we've got, right?
Definitely, yep.
Well, maybe just skipping topics sideways a little bit, but so you've been teaching poetry in all kinds of different contexts for a while. You've taught at a few different universities. You've taught at the high school level. So I guess you've had all kinds of different students in there too. What have you noticed over those years? What's the trend? What are students of poetry looking for? People who come to your class and say, "Teach me poetry." Are they responding to the same things through the years? Do you see people looking for? Are students writing different kinds of poetry, or are we reading different things? Wow, that's a really complicated, loaded,
that's a
100-pound question, isn't it?
It's embedded with layers of. Well, the one thing that I think it's kind of a simplistic answer, but I find it true, is that one universal I've found throughout, whether it's high school level or college, is that students are a little bit tentative, afraid. They're not comfortable. They think they might be embarrassed by what they're writing about or how well they write. So to me, even at higher levels, trying to create kind of a accepting, quiet, friendly environment, you know, where they can open up and feel comfortable to try out different things, because that's how you grow as a writer. You've got to be willing to try things, think outside of the box, and not worry that you're going to be criticized that that's stupid. And I try to tell students that writing is one of the few areas where oddness is valued in life. That's one thing I love about it. Being different is the goal, you know. And so much of daily life is, well, conform, this is how we do things, follow the rules, go from point A to point B. So you're allowed to get kind of crazy and explore things. So I find that at every level, really.
Sure, and I agree, I noticed that too, and that seems like a mindset that sometimes it's hard to to foster that I'm telling students it gets easier to notice things. Do you find that once you get in kind of that a certain mindset that you notice things, you're like, oh, there's a poem, or there's an idea, or there's a line, and so do you find that gets easier the more that you are in that mindset?
I think for me too, and not only for my students. I think the more you do something, you start getting better at utilizing the material of the everyday. I mean, there are poems everywhere happening. And I think you start developing, like you said, kind of a radar, because you start caring. If you're serious about it, you start caring about picking up new ideas, new materials. You know, most of our daily lives, I think we gloss over things. And that, your original question, why I write, I think that's another reason is that poetry for me allows me to go beyond the surface level of experience, where I can experience or witness something, and then in my own privacy, when I'm sitting at my desk, I can take out that experience and then ask myself questions like, why did it happen that way? What does it mean? And I'll kind of dig below the surface of it, which takes time.
Sure.
And you don't have time to do that. Life moves too fast in ordinary, everyday life. So a lot of it is, I think, slowing down and diving deeper below the surface. And it's that way for students. They start to see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, whose fantastic quote is that? I write to taste life twice.
That's perfect. Who is that?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
I have an idea buried somewhere deeply in here.
Sounds profound and accurate.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, it's not mine. I didn't make
Yeah.
it up. So everyone watching this interview, you can
Yeah.
Google that fast and find out who said it.
Right.
But okay, that leads me to another thing I was thinking about. You're pretty familiar with your process by now. Does a poem still surprise you? Are you working on something and just find that it takes a turn or goes someplace you had no idea?
Definitely. There's a poem that I intend to read this evening, which is a perfect example of that. I started writing a poem and I thought it was finished. And at the very end, it reminded me of another conversation I had with someone years before. And so it's almost like the poem became two poems in one. It took a turn. I was surprised. So, and I hope that the listener or reader will be surprised, but it started out being a poem about the metaphor of holding back your feelings so that you'd have some later on. But then I remembered a friend who was suffering from cancer, and a conversation we had in which he said something to the effect, life's too short to save your feelings. Spend them while you can. But anyway, that was a place I wasn't even intending to go. It was like a detour. But a lot of times I think you would agree, the writing process is exactly that. Like they say, no surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader. So a lot of times that happens.
So in that case, my work is full of surprises for everybody because so I know that I have just pages and pages of things, whole plot lines and threads that I've written and thrown out. Do you work that way as a poet as well, and more kind of shorter, concentrated things? Do you go down long paths and to kind of investigate and sometimes they just don't work? Do you kind of repurpose things?
That's the part I hate.
Right,
how often they don't work. You spend, all right, let's say, as I mentioned, 4 hours in the morning, and let's say I spent it all on trying to start one poem and nothing really happened. It could be frustrating. It's like a waste of your morning. But as happened with that other poem, sometimes something clicks. And it's like fishing. There's another metaphor. You have to be patient. You throw your line out there, and a lot of days you might not even get a nibble. But once in a while, if you hang in there, you catch a fish, you catch a big one, a poem that you like,
fish, yeah.
Something like that. So, but no, the frustration is more often than the successes, really. You know?
But you miss every shot you don't take, right?
That's right. That's
If
right.
you can't catch fish if you don't go fishing.
That's right.
Sure. Well, okay. So what do you do with the stuff that isn't working? Do you just delete it forever? Do you have like I keep a recycling file? Like someday I'm going to come back and make this idea work.
For sure. For sure.
Any like resurrection stories, things you've pulled back from a.
All the time. Well, that most recent book, Far Out Factoids, years ago. I'm not even sure how long ago. 10, 12 years ago, I started writing these poems based on factoids. And I used the factoid as a title and kind of a springboard into the poem. And I wrote maybe 100 of these. And it was more of an exercise to just keep me writing in between projects. And to be honest, most of them weren't very good. So I just shoved them in a file. And I published a few here and there. And just a few years ago, I thought, I should take those out, brush them off, see if there's anything there that I could revise or work with. And out of 100 of them, I came up with maybe 30 that I thought had any kind of value. So yeah, I pulled them out. I never delete anything completely, like you, because you never know. It might look fresh later.
Yeah, you might want it to.
Yeah.
All the time I'm going back like, oh, I know I wrote a scene like this somewhere.
Right.
Why reinvent the wheel there, right?
Or sometime I'll be writing a poem, and it's about a certain topic, and exact thing will happen. I have a memory of an earlier poem that I sort of broached the subject a little bit, but I know it's in my file. I'll pull it out, even if I can use one image from it. So yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I'll spend all that time writing, but then I'll spend all this time digging and digging and digging instead of rewriting something that was like a paragraph or a couple lines. But then I find it, and sometimes it's how I remembered it.
Yeah.
So,
and with me, I have such a terrible organizational system. My computer, it's no excuse. It's just awful. It'll take me sometimes an hour to find the old poem that I wanted to reference.
But okay, but sometimes like serendipitously you'll run across other things in that process. So if it was really well organized, right?
I like
that's
to think.
Why I don't.
Yeah.
So tell us about what you're working on now. You're just writing forward new poems. Is there another book in the works in the plotting?
I'm working on two books really simultaneously. I don't know how well that's working, but it's almost like I'm schizophrenic. A collection of poems that are really much more philosophical and serious, tend to be more like the way I usually write, and it involves also poems about the recent passing of my mother. So it is a more serious, dark book, more traditional types of poems, not traditional in the sense of like sonnets or rhyming, but I mean more traditional poems on the page. And then the other collection are all prose poems. And they seem to be a little more whimsical and kind of humorous at times. And I think that maybe I started writing that collection as kind of a release from the intense emotions of the other one. So once in a while I'll ping pong back and forth. One day I'll write a prose poem that's kind of whimsical and goofy and speculative. Then I'll go back to some of the more serious ones. So hopefully, I don't have a timeline, but I'd like those two collections at some point to be, finished.
Super, yeah. Well, we look forward to seeing more new work too. So, Neil, thanks for coming to Findlay. I'm looking forward to your reading this evening.
Thank you.
And yeah, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.